Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening, and good night for people who are in other parts of the world. I am so happy to be here once again in the gathering room, the virtual gathering room. And as usual, I am going to natter on a bit until I know that there's, because I can see the little number that says there are 0 people here. So I could sit and talk to myself. It's interesting. A lot of religious traditions believe, oh, okay, people have started coming in. All right. So a lot of religious traditions believe that everything we see is a projection of self. So I just wait for myself to join myself in myself. That sounds a little crazy. I actually believe that it's true. It only sounds crazy because our culture doesn't make space for it. And here is my little black dog, Mr. Bilbo Baggins of Bag End, Wisconsin. Or, oh, now he won't get down. Bilbo Baggins, you are a super snickety hound. Say hi to everybody. Oh, he's just, I read the most beautiful poem by Mary Oliver last night about her little dog Percy, and it says how he rolls over in bed at night with his 4 paws in the air and his eyes dark and fervent, and he says, "Tell me you love me, tell me again." And that's a lot what Bilbo Baggins is like. Yeah, the problem is once he gets up, he really doesn't like getting down. Woof, 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 woof. So just for those of you who can't see the screen, people are popping in from all over the world, and I am doing my usual conversational nattering. Boy, this dog is like situated now. He has no thought of getting down. He likes the camera. You love the camera and the camera loves you. Tell me you love me. Tell me again. That's Bilbo's song. So, wow, seeing wonderful, wonderful people come in. And it's about 11:02, and Bilbo Baggins has had a good long run here. Get down, sir. Get down, sir. You have to call him sir. He's not like a normal dog. He is a distinguished gentleman of a dog. And so,
hi, Anne.
And here's Ro. She's being my tech person. Also, she is being Bilbo Baggins' favorite person, which is why he's all over her. So, I'm just saying hi to everybody who's coming in, and I think I'm ready to sort of start yammering now about the things that I've been thinking. And what I was thinking about yesterday was how when we have different mood states or brain states, it changes our perceptions, and we can't really control how the world looks from inside the sort of lens of a brain state. So I was thinking about a really intense experience that happened to my daughter. She got Hashimoto's disease, which is a thyroid condition, and it just takes all your energy away. And we didn't know what was wrong with her, and she was so young. She's very young to have gotten Hashimoto's disease. So one doctor thought maybe she's depressed, and that's why she has no energy. So let's put her on this antidepressant because, and I know he meant this with the best of intentions, but what he said was, it can't do any harm. Okay. Some antidepressants, I love antidepressants. I am so grateful for them. I think sometimes, I read one book about depression where the author said, I believe in heaven, and I believe that sometimes psychiatrists' office are the outposts of heaven, and that an angel could look like a doctor with a prescription pad, because he went through a depression and it lifted when he went on Prozac, and then he was able to come back to his spirituality. So, and this is kind of what I want to talk about, that due to the chemistry in our biological organism, our perceptions shift. So my daughter was put on this antidepressant, which is very addictive. It didn't work at all. It didn't change anything because that wasn't the problem. And then she tried to stop taking it. Turns out that for this particular substance, it's so addictive to the body that there are actually rehab centers dedicated to getting people off it. It is no way a recreational drug. It's just very addictive. And if you try to go off it, you can go into profound depressions, even if you weren't depressed to begin with. And so there came a point, I mean, she would try and the symptoms, the psychological symptoms were so strong that she had to wait for a time when she had some space. And then, God bless her, she went through something she calls med hell. She titrated down the dose, and then she went cold turkey. It so happens that and then they put her on a different antidepressant to help with coming off the first one. But it so happens that in very young people, the second antidepressant that they gave her actually causes more depression. So she went through 2 weeks of absolute hell because of the chemistry in her brain. And we didn't know if it would take a year. I'm sure there are people out there who've had things happen to them for a long period of time. By the same token, when our brains are flooded with cortisol, we see frightening things because we're in a fear state. When our brains are flooded with oxytocin and serotonin and sex hormones from falling in love, we see the whole world as beautiful. There were birds on the hills, but I never heard them singing until there was you. All the world loves a lover, right? Our perceptual state, which is really influenced by hormones and what we eat and everything, it changes the way we see the world. And we can only see through our subjective, our perceptions, right? So there's always, if there's a filter on your brain, whether because of some kind of a chemical thing, or because you're just in a painful story, the truth only comes filtered through that lens. So it's like putting on a pair. I had another friend who used to talk about depression glasses, how when you put on your depression glasses and you're deeply depressed, all you can remember is sadness. And then the depression goes away and suddenly you can remember all these times of joy. So what I really want to talk about today is how we can see through our own lenses, our own perceptual lenses. Because as we shift, the best part of my daughter's story, this was the whole point of the story. She came through med-hell. And she said, afterwards, she said 2 things. She said, I know now that the world as I see it is a construct of my imagination. That as I imagine the world, so it appears to me. And it's just a game. Like what we call the real world is something that shifts the way a game shifts online when you go to different screens. She said, I see that this is a game. And she said, the other thing is that I'm here to play this game as a human being. And that part of that means that I will at times have wildly different perceptions of what's happening to me. And I have to choose the truth. And what's the truth? It's a lot like the many legends and stories of people who go to the underworld or go to a magical realm. And the one thing they're told is, don't forget. Don't forget that this is a different realm and that your real self is in this realm where you are now, where you're being told you're about to go on an adventure. Part of the adventure is you will be enchanted into believing different things, into believing your fear, into believing your obsessions, into believing whatever the underworld tells you or the fairies tell you or whatever it is. And I'm not saying these are real, I'm saying this is a metaphor. But don't forget the reality. Don't forget who you really are. And often there are things like don't eat anything in the underworld. Don't take that in as reality. So I was thinking, it's as if we are spirits having a human experience who say, we're going to go become human. We know that while we're in the human realm, we're going to be subject to all these different perceptions and we're going to be afraid a lot of the time, and that's going to change the way we see reality. We're going to be angry, and that's going to change the way we see reality. We're going to be depressed. Did I say that already? Yeah, afraid, angry, sad. Those are the big 3 negative emotions. And in those states, we will forget that we're okay. We will forget that there is only love and that we can shift everything depending on how we choose to see the world. And that compassion is the only way of seeing that puts our hearts at rest, because it's the truth of our souls. It's the truth of our being. So we're here, you guys, we're here playing this human game. And we are subject to these different lenses that get put on by circumstance or by fear or by chemistry or whatever. How do we hold the vision? How do we say, I will not forget? I won't forget that compassion is the truth and that everything's happening for me, not to me. So I wanted to talk about that and holding a higher self. And I'll tell you just quickly how I managed to do that, because I had a phase of that myself this week. I went into depression glasses for a while. And what brought me around was that I was writing and doing work with good people who live in compassion. And as I set about trying to offer the world something real and true and loving, my depression glasses came off and my love glasses went on. Or I actually think that love is what we see when there are no obstructions, when the fear is all gone, the fear of negative feeling, the fear of being injured, the fear of losing love. When that's gone and love is present, there are no glasses, there's clarity, there's truth. And every part of me rings with that. In the other places, there's pain, there's paranoia, there's all kinds of stuff. So my question that I wanted to ask you guys is, how do you get to that state of compassion when you're in a state of being taken over by human negative emotion? How do we come back to the knowledge that everything is okay? Second we do that, bang, the glasses come off and the world literally becomes different. So Natalie is saying, I'm learning to listen to the quiet, quiet voice of my soul in those depressive moments. It's always there, always whispering. I just have to remember to listen. Thank you so much, Natalie. So, and I've heard this said over and over, and I've said it myself over and over. You know, you can say as many times as you want, I will not forget the truth. And the moment you're in a situation that overwhelms you, you have to learn to come back. I think we're actually here to learn to come back to that quiet voice. So Natalie's reminding me, and the company of people like you reminds me to wait and feel and listen. And the voice of stillness starts to come up like a spring. It feels to me like water in the desert. And I think of Jesus saying it is like a spring of living water. The love thing comes up because someone reminds me, listen to that voice. Lisa says, what she does is she stops and remembers times she got through. Oh, that is so, these are all things I have told other people, but I need other people to tell me back, because when we get the lenses on or the chemistry in our system or whatever, we need each other. We need to reach out to the people who are hurting and say, I've been there. But have you thought about listening to the quiet voice? Have you sat and remembered the times you got through? So that reminds me of something I learned once, and I'm going to bounce off Lisa and suggest this, and I'm going to do it myself. First thing is, I remember it by the acronym AGE. First thing is, I remember times when abundance came to me. There are so many. I mean, it just is ridiculous when I start listing the ways things are abundant. Oxygen is so abundant. Comfort is so abundant in my world. I'm so overprivileged. I could just go on and on about that. And I do. And it starts to take off the pain glasses. So the G is, I list times that I was grateful or I was able to do something that made people feel grateful to me. And that gratitude, remembering my gratitude and the gratitude of others, is really powerful too. And the E on AGE is, remember when things came to me easily without stress. If I start listing those things, Lisa, thank you so much. I mean, I'm out of the depression glasses today, but the next time I'm just going to remember, because we had this conversation, that all I've got to do is start listing the times when everything worked out. And I readjust. It's like you can take off the negative glasses and go back into reality. So Melanie says, I reach out to people who remember and can remind me. Oh, that's so true. And I go to my animals and trees. Of course. Of course. Sorry?
The Buddha.
Oh, yeah. Did she write Buddha Boo? Oh, Melanie wrote the most amazing poem when she was in the Ride into Light seminar last year. She wrote about her golden retriever whispering a word to her telepathically, and the word was Gaboodaboo. And the word Gaboodaboo turned out to mean all those things that bring me joy. And through the eyes of her golden retriever, like a toy that had stuffing that was so lovely to pull out was pure Gaboodaboo. And being able to pee on a tree was Gaboodaboo. Everything was Gaboodaboo. That is so true. Go into the spirits of animals and plants. They are so peaceful. They are so present. They are so joyful. And if you stop like insisting on the stories in your head and you just let their energy entrain you, they can help pull off the pain glasses and show you the world through love. Because I truly think they live there all the time. I truly think other animals do. So Paulina says, I reconnect with everything non-man-made. I'm with you, Paulina. I go outside, I listen to the birds, I watch the clouds float by, I quiet the voices in my head and listen to those of a higher wisdom. Paulina, you have won the game. That I really believe is the object of the game, is to teach us to do that. And I was thinking about skiing. I love to ski, and how when I first started going down hills that had these big bumps called moguls, if you're watching the Winter Olympics, they look not that scary from on TV, from the lift, but when you're in them and you can't quite control your skis because you're a bad skier like I am, not terrible, I'm like intermediate. I was so afraid that I would crunch up and I would crash and crash. And then I started to learn how to do it, how to handle those big moguls. And now when I see a big mogul field, the thought comes into my mind, I am at play in the fields of God. I am at play in the fields of God. Because I've learned that if I'm not afraid, I can do it. Paulina has got it. She goes and finds the higher wisdom, and she is at play in the game of life. So, do you have any questions for me? I think Ro is suggesting we take questions, and I think that is the most perfect idea ever. So if you have questions, please put them up. Gaboodaboo! Anne Wood says, yeah, I love that word, to have a word. That one word could take you out of the depression glasses and into compassion and to the state of the way God sees the world. Rebecca says, in challenging times, I get quiet and ask the stillness inside, why have you come? What do you want me to see, feel, or know? And then listen through body sensations. That is genius. And I would even take it a step further. Here's a little therapy technique, but I use it for spirituality. So doing what Rebecca does, get quiet, get still, and then say, why have you come to the, not to the stillness, but to the challenge that I'm facing. Then I switch chairs and I become the challenge in my life. Like I was very worried about my daughter at that time. And I was like, why have you come into her life? But more, I get the information from me. So why has this challenge come into my life? And what I heard, Rebecca, I'm so glad you brought this up because I did that. And what it responded was, I am here to teach your daughter in 2 months what you learned through 20 years of meditation. And to have her brain tossed around by these chemicals is teaching her a clarity and a wisdom. And look at her courage, look at her tenacity. She can handle this challenge, and it's doing for her in 2 months what took you 20 years. And I forget that. I forget that answer. I need to write it down and put it on the wall, because the moment my fear glasses go on, it filters out these incredible moments of spiritual truth that have been given me, and I think are given to all of us. So thank you again for all of you are just telling reminding me how to play the game better, how to get into the stillness. So Liz says, what do you recommend for shame? Oh my goodness, shame is probably the most perfidious and dangerous emotion, because it tells us we're not good enough to take off the glasses. It tells us we deserve the negativity. It's something that, I know there's dog shaming online, but I think it's one reason animals don't get insane. They don't have the verbal capacity to tell a story about how they themselves are bad. When a lot of the Tibetan Buddhists, who we're now quite familiar with, the Dalai Lama and all the other lamas, the Rinpoches, when they began to teach in America, people would ask them, what do you do about self-hatred and shame about the self? And they were like, they'd listen to the translator and then go, what? And the translator would repeat it. And they would say, what, you mean you hate yourself? How can you hate yourself? Your whole, everything about you is designed to value yourself. And it's because culturally, we have a very strong culture of shame in the West. And the whole, if you come from a Christian tradition, a Western tradition is almost all based on a religious tradition that believed in original sin, that there is something innately bad about you. Whereas like in Chinese philosophy, you're seen as being born perfect, and then you get clouded by illusion. I'm really, really lucky in that I went to live in Asia and learned Chinese when I was only 20 years old. And I hadn't really formed a lot. I had plenty of shame, believe me. But I got this big dose of a different culture. And what I realized is all that shame those are glasses put on by the culture. And maybe that means the religion, the national culture, the family culture we grow up in. And what we have to do, I think the answers that people were giving up front were really, really useful. Go wild. Anything without culture is called wild. And going into wildness, if you go with the birds and the trees, they have no shame and they don't look at you with shame. You can be yourself with them with no shame. I don't know if I've told you the story about Adam and the lion. Ro, have I told the story about Adam and the lion in the gathering room yet?
Bears retelling.
Okay, she says it bears retelling. One time when we were in Africa, we were in a Land Rover that had no doors, windows, or roof, just sort of seats on wheels. And we were watching a pride of lions. And my son Adam was sitting in the front seat, which is the lowest seat. They're kind of in risers. And there's no door. So he's literally just there. And a big male lion broke away from the pride and came and walked toward the car. And I don't know if Adam is different vibrationally or if he's different, if he smells interesting to them or whatever, but animals do seem often to pay him particular attention. So this huge lion comes up and his eyes are like serial killer eyes, right? These yellow eyes with tiny pupils. And he's like staring right at my son, eye to eye from a few feet away. And I got quite nervous as a mom. I'm not afraid of that situation is kept so safe by the wonderful people in Africa, but it was weird to have my son a few feet from a lion that looked like it could just bite his head off. So after the incident passed and we went away, I said to him, Adam, was that scary to you at all? And he's like, no. I was feeling him and he was feeling me back. And I was like, okay. I said, well, what was he feeling? And Adam said, what lions always feel. And I said, well, what do lions always feel? And he said, peaceful. Because he doesn't have a lot of language and he has no use for lying, Adam doesn't go into shame. And, they told me when I was pregnant with him that I would be ashamed my whole life. I read a book that said, get used to being ashamed every time you go outside with your child. And I decided I will not be ashamed of him. He is perfect. He is perfect in the eyes of God. And I will put a little Harvard shirt on him and go out. And if people don't like it, they can lump it. And I respectfully do not care. And as he's grown, I thought, this is a spiritual master. Shame? Why would I feel shame? He can feel the peace of the animals and he stays in it. So my story said, I will not have shame over this. And it occurs to me as I'm saying this, I could make the same choice about myself. We could all make the same choice about ourselves. I will not be ashamed. I am as God has made me. And that's got to be perfect for right now. And when I get broken, it's part of my human game experience. I'm still good. So I think it's really, really hard to take off shame glasses, but making a really strong decision and then connecting with people who love you. You have to make the decision though, because no one can love you out of shame. You have to make a choice to not take that poison. So Paulina adds a question now. She says, why do we keep going down that bunny hole? Animals don't do that. I learned that with you in Longolosi. So if we humans are higher beings, why do we use our minds not for good, but for evil? And this is the deep question that we come to the gathering room to answer. And here's what I believe. I believe that our capacity for joy and for compassion grows after we get lost in fear and meanness and shame. I believe that it's the fight to get back to ourselves in these bodies, which are so vulnerable. It is that very process we came to experience. So Rumi says, you know, when you're so broken, helpless, dumbfounded, unable to say yes or no, then a stretcher comes down to gather you up. And he says, then you become a mighty kindness. I think we go through this. We chose to come have a human experience that involves brains that go wildly out of kilter and perceive pain where there is only beauty. And they're so painful that they incentivize us to take the depression or the anger or the fear glasses off and see compassionately again, to come back to the peace of the animals and the trees. And we do it because the returning makes us strong. When I go skiing now, I love mogul fields more than anything else. I'm at play in the fields of God, because once you learn to do that, as scary and difficult as it is, there's such joy in learning to almost fall and then trust your technique to bring you back. So that's why I wanted to get with you guys today and talk about techniques for coming home when our brains are in a state that we can't control. We can't say we're never going to go into those states. So I'm going to take one last question from Anne. Do you think we can train our brains not to keep going to the negative? I have one friend who doesn't do this, but most of us do. And it fascinates me how she only sees the positive. I do think, Anne, that some of us are born with brains that are equipped or more likely to go to positive things. I have a friend who was saying she has an aunt who all her children and grandchildren are just happy people. There's just bad things happen and they're like, but on the plus side. And she's like, I missed that gene. You know, I think that the genes she got were from her poet father, and she's more likely to experience swings into the negative, but that's because when she comes back from that, she is a mighty kindness. She can reach into the darkness and bring light. And we can train ourselves to do that. I have the kind of brain that skids off. When I get tired, when I get hungry, we all have this. Our hormone systems change when you're in different, periods of your life or times of the month, for those of us who are female. And yeah, you can absolutely train your brain to think in this way. So when I skid down, like I did this week, I have a construct in my head that says, this is a set of glasses. It is changing my perceptions. Only compassion is true. I remember feeling that. I remember thinking it. Now, how do I find my way back? And you guys have been helping me get more solid in things I've done before. And I'm coming back faster and faster. That's what happens. We come back to ourselves faster and faster because we learn the skill of returning to truth. So, yeah, remember the times you got through it. make lists of the times when life was beautiful and everything came easily and abundantly, and you were in so much gratitude. Somebody just says, Anne says she loves it. She can see my arrows behind me. Yep. Archery is one way I go out and remember how to be present. And I listen to the birds and I feel the trees when I go out there. And my whole objective is to hit the center of the target with my arrow. And that's what it's like with these brains that we've been given. We can find a way to aim toward compassion, optimism, the knowledge that we are here on an adventure, but we are ultimately safe no matter what happens. When we come back to that, the glasses are off and we're in the game of humanity, which is just a game. But my darlings, we are here to play it. And I am so grateful to you for coming to play with me today. I can't believe half an hour has already gone by. I love you so much. I can't wait for our next gathering. Mwah. Keep your glasses off, and I'll see you next week.